Lewis and Clark, Missouri River in Montana. The stretch of the Missouri River between Decision Point, Fort Benton, and Great Falls holds profound historical significance, especially in the context of the Lewis and Clark expedition. This segment of the Missouri River tested the Corps of Discovery's endurance, decision-making, and unity. They faced one of their most difficult physical challenges, the portage. They made a pivotal navigational decision at Decision Point. Today, I'm going to depart the city of Great Falls, drive through Black Eagle Falls and the town of Black Eagle, and then drive northeast on US 87. I'll take the Ryan Dam Road turnoff to Great Falls, stand where Meriwether Lewis did when he first discovered the Great Falls, and then return to US 87. From there, drive to Decision Point, where the Missouri and Marias rivers meet, and Lewis and Clark had to make a significant decision. I'll then drive to Fort Benton, explore the town, and spend the night at the historic and charming Grand Union Hotel. As I begin my journey of the Lewis and Clark expedition in Montana, I'm departing from the city of Great Falls to Fort Benton, and I notice a waterfall in downtown Great Falls. This waterfall is called Black Eagle Falls, which I stopped at to get a great view from Black Eagle Memorial Island Park. This is not the Great Falls, and I have to drive 10 miles outside of town to see how great they are. Black Eagle Falls got its name from a striking moment recorded by Meriwether Lewis during the Lewis and Clark expedition. On June 14, 1805, Lewis came upon a waterfall that he initially referred to as the Upper Pitch. As he observed the area, he noticed a beautiful little island, well timbered, is situated about the middle of the river. In this island, on a cottonwood tree, an eagle has placed her nest, a more inaccessible spot, I believe, she could not have found. The eagle he saw was black, and the image of it nesting high above the roaring falls left an impression. Over time, the name Black Eagle Falls replaced Upper Pitch, and it was formally adopted in 1872 by a Northern Pacific Railway survey engineer. The falls are the first in a series of 5 that make up the Great Falls of Missouri. The Black Eagle Dam, built in 1890, now controls the water flow and has submerged about half of the original falls. The nearby community of Black Eagle, Montana, also takes its name from this historic sighting. It's a poetic example of how a fleeting moment in nature, an eagle nesting in a cottonwood, became etched into the geography and history of the American West. My drive from Great Falls to Ryan Dam, Decision Point, and Fort Benton. While the Great Falls themselves are located in a relatively flat river valley, the surrounding region quickly becomes rugged and mountainous. Driving and headed northeast on Highway 87, after a few miles, I turned right onto Ryan Dam Road. The road took me through wide-open prairie and farmland, fields of wheat, barley, and hay, with deer grazing here and there. That stretch of US 87 between Great Falls and Fort Benton, the scenery rolls out like a quiet postcard of the Montana plains, with the Missouri River winding nearby, golden grasses swaying, and not a single car in sight. They have a reddish-brown coat in summer, with a white underside, and a tail that flashes when alarmed, often found near water sources in wooded areas. That sense of solitude opens an intimate show of wildlife. I got lucky and saw a white-tailed deer grazing in the fields, checking me out. By the time I reached the bottom, the roar of the falls had replaced the silence. I stepped out, looked up at the bluffs I'd just come down, and felt small in the best possible way. As I got closer to the Missouri River, the land changed. It became more rugged, with deep coulees and tall bluffs, some rising 200 to 300 feet high. The road narrowed and turned to dirt, winding like a ribbon unraveling down the bluff. Each bend brought a new angle, cliffs towering above, the river glinting below, and the wind carrying nothing but the sound of my tires crunching gravel. It felt like I was descending into a forgotten chapter of the West. Tomorrow I'm looking forward to walking the Great Falls Portage route, one of the toughest parts of the Lewis and Clark journey. Just thinking about what they went through is overwhelming. When I look straight at those bluffs, I can't help but wonder, how did they get all that equipment up there? Boats, supplies, everything. No roads, no machines, just grit, muscle, and determination. It's hard to picture, but I'm excited to follow in their footsteps or driving them. He wrote that no words or paintings could truly show how amazing it was. And honestly, standing there myself, I felt the same way. He called it the grandest sight I ever beheld. As he got closer, he heard the roar of the water and saw what looked like smoke rising. It was the mist from the falls. He hurried down the hill, sat on the rocks, and just stared in awe. Where Lewis first saw the falls, I stood close to the spot where Meriwether Lewis first saw the Great Falls of the Missouri on June 13, 1805. It gave me chills knowing I was looking at the same powerful scene he saw over 200 years ago. At the end of Ryan Dam Road, I parked and walked across a suspension bridge to Ryan Island. From there, I got a great view of the Great Falls of the Missouri. The water rushed over the dam and through the canyon. It was powerful and beautiful. Leaving the falls, you can't just drive straight up the bluffs. You have to snake your way out. The road winds back and forth, hugging the side of the cliffs like it's trying to find the easiest way up. Even in a car, it feels steep and slow. The bluffs are part of the Missouri River Breaks, a rugged, deeply eroded landscape that defines this stretch of Montana. These are part of the riverine canyon system carved by the Missouri over thousands of years. The river often hides deep in its channel, with steep, winding bluffs rising 200 to 300 feet above it. This terrain is typical of the Upper Missouri River Breaks National Monument, which stretches east of Great Falls and preserves the wild character of the river Lewis and Clark saw. When Meriwether Lewis first saw the Great Falls in 1805, he described the surrounding bluffs as high and perpendicular. The water descends with a force and velocity, which gives it a most majestic appearance. They had to portage around these very bluffs, dragging boats and gear up and over the steep terrain you're now seeing from the road or trail. After soaking in that view, I'll return to US 87 and continue toward Decision Point, where the Missouri and Marias rivers meet. It was here that Lewis and Clark faced one of their most critical choices. Which river would lead them to the Rockies? They debated for days, and ultimately they made the correct choice. Standing there, I'll reflect on how much depended on that moment of judgment. Decision Point, where the rivers met and history was made. I visited Decision Point near the town of Loma, Montana. This is where Lewis and Clark arrived on June 1805, and faced a major challenge. Two rivers came together here, the Missouri River and the Marias River, and they had to figure out which one to follow west. I'm standing on truly historic ground, Decision Point, near the confluence of the Missouri and Marias rivers. This is where, on June 1805, Lewis and Clark faced one of their most critical choices. Which river would lead them to the Rocky Mountains and the Pacific? The moment at Decision Point, the core of discovery arrived here and found two rivers merging, but which was the true Missouri? The southern fork, now known as the Missouri, looked smaller and muddier. The northern fork, now the Marias, looked larger and clearer. Most of the men thought the northern fork was the right path, but Lewis and Clark trusted their instincts, choosing the southern fork after days of scouting and debate. Most of the men thought the muddy north fork, the Marias, was the Missouri, but Lewis and Clark weren't convinced. The south fork had clear water, which they believed came from the mountains. They spent 5 days exploring both rivers before deciding the south fork was the true Missouri. And they were right. Standing there, I could see the same view they saw from the high ground above the river. The land drops down to the confluence and the view is wide open, prairie, river, and sky. It's easy to imagine the core of discovery setting up camp and debating their next move. I'll drive on to Fort Benton, once the world's most inland port and a bustling hub of frontier trade. I'll explore the town's historic streets and end the day at the Grand Union Hotel, a beautifully preserved 1882 landmark. With its creaking floors and riverfront views, it's the perfect place to rest and imagine the steamboats that once docked just outside. I've decided to follow the path of Lewis and Clark, but with a twist. Along the way, I'll be staying in haunted hotels, old inns, and historic buildings where the past still lingers. My first stop was the Grand Union Hotel in Fort Benton, Montana. This is just the beginning. As I follow the trail west, I'll be looking for more haunted places, hotels with creaky floors, flickering lights, and stories that refuse to fade. One of the most famous ghost stories is about a cowboy who tried to ride his horse up the main staircase. He didn't get far. The bar manager shot him, Some guests say they still hear hoofbeats on the stairs. Others have seen strange lights, heard music from the old saloon, or even spotted a little girl running down the hallway, only to vanish into a wall. One guest even said he felt her brush against his leg before she disappeared. The third floor where I stayed is known for ghost sightings. Some say a former maid still lingers there, and others have seen children playing in the halls. I stayed in room 305 at the Grand Union Hotel in Fort Benton, Montana. The building dates back to 1882 and is one of the oldest and most haunted hotels in the state. From there, I'll drive on to Fort Benton, once the world's most inland port and a bustling hub of frontier trade. I'll explore the town's historic streets and end the day at the Grand Union Hotel, a beautifully preserved 1882 landmark. With its creaking floors and riverfront views, it's the perfect place to rest and imagine the steamboats that once docked just outside. The Lewis and Clark Memorial in Fort Benton is one of the most striking tributes to the expedition anywhere along the trail. Meriwether Lewis holding a telescope modeled after his actual one, William Clark with a historically accurate compass, Sacagawea, wearing traditional Shoshone dress, carrying baby Jean-Baptiste Seaman, Lewis's Newfoundland dog, at their side. The statue commemorates the 9 days the Corps of Discovery spent at the confluence of the Missouri and Marias rivers, as they attempted to decide which way to proceed. It was Fort Benton's contribution to the U.S. bicentennial in 1976 and is now the official Lewis and Clark Memorial of Montana. The George Montgomery statue and the first bridge in Montana, both located in historic Fort Benton. George Montgomery statue, rider of the Purple Sage. About this statue honors George Montgomery, 1916-2000, a Hollywood actor, artist, and Montana native. He starred in 87 films and was also a talented sculptor, and is from Montana, created by Montgomery himself. The statue celebrates his Western film legacy and artistic contributions. It's part of a small cluster of historical markers near the old Fort Benton Bridge. The Fort Benton Bridge is the first steel bridge in Montana. Built in 1888 today, it's a pedestrian bridge that offers scenic views of the river and town. It's listed on the National Register of Historic Places.